Hi, it's Amy Powers, and I thought I'd show you how I made a game board using stamps from Eileen Hall's new collection. This is a really fun project and great to make with children this summer. You can use the stamps that I used or search your own stash. Maybe you have some stamps that can be used to make a game board. Let me show you how I made this game. Did you know you can purchase blank game boards? I'll leave links for a couple of sources. The style I chose makes an 18-inch square game board, and it folds into a 9-inch square. Now I suppose you could stamp directly onto the blank game board, but the thought of doing that gives me anxiety. So I stamped onto paper first that I glued onto the game board base. I used watercolor paper and I cut 2 sheets that are 9 inches by 18 inches. And then these 2 sheets will fit together to create the 18-inch square game board. The stamp set I used is the swatch card set from Eileen Hall. I began by placing the swatch card stamp in the center of the stamp and stencil tool. This project is a perfect use for Sizzix stamp and stencil tool. Since the stamp and stencil tool doesn't have a raised frame, I could easily stamp this large format project. Then I marked one of the papers at the top, 2 1/4 inches over from the left and 1 1/4 inch down. And that's to mark placement for the first stamping. Later I'm going to be doing my coloring with water-based markers, so I want to do my stamping in a compatible ink. I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black. I stamped the first swatch card stamp, lining up the left side with the mark that I made. After I figure out the placement, I place a piece of washi on the tool, and this will help me line up the next stamping. And I ink the first stamping. I place my thumb approximately where I want the left edge of the next stamp, but you'll see I still need to make adjustments. You'll see throughout this process that I need to adjust and readjust the paper often to get it into the right spot. It takes a little patience, but in my opinion, it's much easier and neater, for that matter, to move the paper rather than to move the inked stamp. The red tape does help me to keep everything straight. However, this is a handmade craft, and there will be imperfections. Give yourself grace and be okay with some mistakes and inconsistencies. It'll just be part of the charm. That's what I tell myself anyway. When I get to the end of the row, I stamp one swatch card vertically, and this is to indicate the turning the corner in the gameplay. I turn the paper 90 degrees and work out the placement before I stamp. And here's where I make a discovery. Since I did center the stamp on the tool, I can pretty much use the inking side of the tool to position the paper underneath. I again place a piece of tape on the top to make sure that I line this row up, and I continue stamping. And since I am stamping multiple times, it's a good idea to clean the stamp every once in a while to keep the ink from going where you don't want it. I still will get ink where I don't want it, but this helps to keep things neat. And that's how it goes. Move the paper, check the position, adjust if necessary, and then stamp all the way around the board. And when I get to the part where the stamp will bridge across both sheets, I line the sheets up very carefully, being extra careful to line up the paper edges. Also, when I place the stamp, I don't want to split a section of the swatch card where the color will go, so I'm just extra careful with the placement of this next stamp. To make room for adding the game's name to the board, the next line of stamps will line up beneath that last stamp. And I do the same for the next and last line of stamps. And when I put the two sheets together, you can see that the gameplay can go whichever direction you want it to go in. There are a few places where ink did smudge, and I'll use my Mono sand eraser to get those. I use alphabet stamps that I have to spell out the name of the game. And since there is a small stamp in Eileen's set with the words Perfect Match, I chose that as the name of my game. Since the letter E appears in the word perfect twice, when I'm placing the letters, I place the first E and then move that to where the next E will be when I get to it, leaving the space for the first one. And then after I've stamped this word, I can go back and add the first E. I did smudge some ink here, but nothing that the sand eraser can't fix. When placing that E in place, I use a piece of plastic film to protect the surface since that stamp is inky. For the word start at the top of the board, I don't need to worry about the placement of the second T since it falls at the end of the word. And when I stamp the word finish, I just left a little gap for the second I. And next I stamped that perfect match stamp on each of the swatch cards around the board. And this wasn't my best stamping. Some of them I pressed too hard and others aren't inked enough. And now I'm going to use this stamp set from the Ink Blot shop to add decoration to the game board. And I use the same plastic film to help place this repeating pattern. I place a piece of paper over areas to mask off where I don't want the image. And then I go back in with a black pen to connect skipped areas or where things didn't exactly line up. I picked out 12 colors in rainbow order to use for coloring the game. And the markers I used are water-based. Instead, you could use Copic markers, watercolor, colored pencils, whatever you want. I just used markers that I had, including a few from a set that's from Lidl. I tried to pick colors that were different enough to distinguish them from one another. And if you think about it, this will be a great game for children when they're learning about the color wheel and how to see colors differently. It also will be a great game for pre-readers. It'll be a great game to play with people who have cognitive delay or with elderly people who have memory issues. I've colored these in rainbow order, but if you want to make the game a little more challenging, you can color them in random order. I also colored the letters in rainbow order. And then I colored in all of the illustrations around the board. I used this warm gray Zig Clean Color marker in the color 907, and I added a drop shadow, trying mostly to stay at the bottom and the right of the image. And this is a great way to disguise areas where I colored outside of the lines. And then I used that same marker to shade these paintbrushes by brushing over the bottom part of the brush. And then I went around adding shadows under all of the art and the letters and even the swatch cards that make up the game. I scored each of those sheets of paper at 9 inches on the 18-inch side. And I want to make that score line broad, so I scored it on both sides. And I even brought it over to the game board and scored it using the game board. And I do this for both of the papers. I used Beacon 3-in-1 adhesive to glue these onto the board, being careful to line them up as well as I can. I put this huge dictionary on the folded game board to help flatten it. And now it's time to make the game spinner. I stamped the color wheel stamp onto a piece of watercolor paper. And I also stamped the paintbrush image because I have an idea for it. I used those same 12 colors and I fill in the wheel. After all of this coloring that I've done, some of the markers are losing their color. I color the paintbrush too. And then I use a circle die to cut out this color wheel. For the spinner hardware, I could use this really old set from Tim Holtz, which you attach with a brad. But I think I'll use one of these plastic 2-part spinners. I'll need to also cut a circle big enough to accommodate the spinner into the center of this image. And now I can assemble. Here's my thought about that paintbrush. I think it would be a fun way to customize the spinner. I fussy cut it out and then I glued it into place. I used a black pen to hide the white edge left from my fussy cutting. I glued 3 slightly larger circles together and then added them to the spinner to make a nice, sturdy game spinner. Now, because these markers are water-based, I want to seal the game board. I used these self-adhesive laminating sheets from Avery, and I cut them to be 9 inches square. And when I cut them, I was careful to leave on the end that says "Peel Here," which exposes just a little bit of the adhesive. I placed down that area, being very careful with the alignment, and then I pulled the top part and used a bone folder to flatten it. And I did that for all 4 sections. So what do you think? Are you inspired to make a game board? If you do, I'd love to see it. And there are a lot of ways that you could add to this gameplay and customize it and make it your own. I really hope you like this project, and I hope it inspires you. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you like this project and want to see more like it, let me know by giving me a thumbs up, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Take care.